All right, guys, today we're going to talk about the McCoy Game from Scope Magazine. Now, I know a lot of you have been looking around the internet for pictures and stuff of this. There's not really anything there because they just published this story in Scope Magazine. This is brand new. But today we're going to talk about how setting affects the plot in a story. Now, there are a lot of things in this story, and Mr. Zara and I were discussing this yesterday. There are a lot of things in this story that hint at what the setting is, but it doesn't really tell us directly what the setting is outside of a few specific things. So first, we've got to identify the setting. Our first question is, what is the setting? So when we start looking at this story, we see some things about a whole extra house that Grandpa used to have, and they call him Big Mac in this story. And that's where they end up going. His mom drops him off, Uncle Ray drops Dre off, and they show up at this house that no one knew Grandpa had. So Grandpa is a little bit mysterious, and that lends a little bit to the atmosphere of the story. There's a little bit of mystery here in this story. And so we remember that setting isn't just time and place, it's also atmosphere. And so there's a little bit of a mysterious atmosphere, especially here at the beginning. Especially when we talk about things like the letter that he got from Grandpa that says he's not really dead, that McCoy's never died. And then they get to the house and we learn a little bit more about Dre. Dre is Jamal's cousin, and Dre is already at the house. And this lends a little bit more to the atmosphere of the story because Dre is sort of a competitive guy. We know that he plays basketball. We know that he plays with older kids. We know that he's bigger than Jamal because he's sort of towering over him, blocking the entrance when we first meet him. And so that lends a little bit more to the atmosphere of the story. And I would call that a little bit of competitiveness or a little bit of a competition that is underlying the story all the way through. So then we start to notice some things about Grandpa's private house or Grandpa's secret house. There's a model of the solar system, but it seems to be way more advanced than any other models that we know about. So either Grandpa has tapped into alien technology, or this story is somehow taking place in the future. So that's another portion of this setting that's important, is that this is probably in the future. And there's a few more things that lend to that idea that this is the future. And we also hear about Grandpa's crazy, quote, made-up space missions, which might not be so crazy after all. We also have the android there, the key droid. When we first meet him in the opening of the house, he's just a pile of rusty parts, but Jamal presses a button and he comes together. We don't really have technology like this available to us. It's there, but it's not a bunch of parts that will just be laying there that you could have magnetically put back together. So again, that lends itself to say that this is probably in the future. Then they have a choice here. They can either just go straight to the golden door or they can compete for a key. And they choose to compete in a couple of different places here. And one of those places has jetpacks and an anti-gravity room. None of those things are really available to us in a real way, not mass-produced anyway, and not in an affordable way right now. So again, this is probably sometime in the future. The other room is a series of tunnels that includes some sort of dangerous space alien that is partial to Motown music. And so that also lets you know that this is probably sometime in the future. And all of the knowledge that Grandpa has about space and all the things that he teaches them about space and space aliens lets you know that quite a bit of time would have had to have passed between now and then, because there's quite a bit of knowledge that we certainly don't have, that Grandpa seems to have in this story. So we've got a few things pointing at what the setting is, but now we have to try and understand. Oh, and I forgot the one thing at the end. All the way down at the end, aside from the aliens, we have the spaceship. So there's quite a bit here, and the elaborate unlocking mechanism, but that could probably be built. But there's a lot here that tells us that this is in the future, you know. So now we have to decide, what does this setting do to the plot or the characters in the story? So first of all, we've already talked about some of that stuff. Just by identifying some of the things that tell us this is a futuristic story, we've already identified some of the things that are affected by the setting. We've already identified that we wouldn't be able to have the knowledge that Grandpa had. We've already identified that we wouldn't be able to fly around in jetpacks in an anti-gravity world. We don't know that there are breath worms or even how to defeat them. There are all these things in this story that couldn't happen unless this was a futuristic story. And so it sounds a bit like circular logic, but it really isn't. In order to identify the setting, you had to piece together all of these different parts of the setting. And in doing so, you identified things that wouldn't be possible without this story happening in certain places at certain times.